Reacher Campers, The Secret of Shadow Lake, Part 2 of 3. Norm did not get a good night's sleep. When he put his head on the pillow, his feet stuck way out over the end of the bed. When he pulled his feet up, his neck poked out over the other end of the bed. By the time he found a comfortable way to curl up, the sun was rising, and Zena had at the door to their cabin. "Rise and shine, campers," she said. "Time for a good breakfast, and then basic canoe skills." Pardon me?" asked Oliver. Did you say something about lake monster from the dark circle under the eye?" He looked like he got as much sleep as Norm did. "Not to worry, that's just an old camp legend," said Lena. Maybe she turned and headed towards the dining hall. "Follow me." After breakfast, Zena led them down to Shadow Lake, where Grumpsick stood waiting, clipboard in his hand. Norm wondered what the other campers were up to. The dinner hall had been filled with a wild collection of campers. Was a boy with bat wings, a fish girl, and even a pair of twins with horns and goat legs. But I like Norm. Had respect. He towered over all of them. A low mist huge over Shadow Lake. 2 canoes sat alone to Thor, half in the water and half on sandy beach. Norm scratched his head, wondering if the canoe would hold his weight. Hazel nervously thumped her feet. "I'm not going in that water," said Oliver. "Why not?" said Grumpsick. "Because there's a monster in that lake," said Whips. "You mean the OL creature of Shadow Lake?" said Grumpsick. Norm, Oliver, Whips, and Hazel all nodded. Grumpsick waved them off. "That's just an old camp legend. A tall tale." They all let out a sigh to reveal. "Maybe," said Grumpsick. "Okay, on the canoe. Norm and Oliver, you're partners. Wisp and Hazel, you're together. First step, life vest." Zena and Grumpsick helped the campers adjust the straps to tighten their vests. Oliver was too big, his shiny body, that he couldn't move his head left or right. Norm was too small, that it could be fluffy strap. Wisp had a vest small enough to fit a doll, with just enough room for his wings to stick out. Hazel fit fine, but she kept bucking and buckling the caps. "Second step," said Grumpsick. "Get straight in the canoe. One in front, one in back." Norman Oliver's eye up the canoe like it was an alligator. "I'll take the back," Norm said with a wheeze. This vest was too tight. "Did you say something?" asked Oliver. He tried to turn to hear Norm better, but the vest was so puffy it covered his ears. Norm pointed at Oliver and then at the front of the canoe. Oliver gave Norm a big thump and clicked into the front of the canoe. Norm put one foot in the canoe. The canoe sunk into the sand. He held the side and put his other foot in. The canoe sunk even lower. Norm had a bad feeling about this. Balance is everything, said Grumstick, marching along the beach with his clipboard and a whisk. Balance. Got it, said Norm. He carefully lined himself with the middle of the back seat and sat down. The second he did, the front end was canoe shot up in the air and capsized. A lever, said Grumstick. Yes.
Seat. Seat.
I'm sorry. Yes, stand up, said Grumstick. A lever stopped trashing and flailing and stood up. The water came up to his knee, and the only thing grabbing him was a piece of lakeweed wrapped around his ankle. I knew that, said Oliver. His cheeks were very red. Grumstick scribbled something on his clipboard. After a few more times, Norm and Oliver had balanced part down. Norm had to sit in the very middle of the canoe between the seat and Oliver. Well, it didn't matter where Oliver sat, so he looked at a seat in the front of the canoe. Better to see the lake creatures that way if I decide to show up. Hazel and Whips had their own challenge. Keeping Hazel on one seat. She was up. She was down. She was at the front of the canoe. She was at the back. If you don't sit down and stay in your seat, said Wolf, I'm going to splash your fur with lake water. Said Whips. I'm going to splash your fur with lake water. Hazel gasped. You wouldn't. I would if that was it. I'll take to keep you from tipping this canoe over. Hazel took her seat. Meanwhile, Norm and Oliver sat as still as possible. Their canoe sat as slow in the lake that any sudden moment might fill in with water. Okay, campers, said Grumstick, the next stop is rowing in straight line. He pointed to an orange cone floating away from the beach. You'll have to work together, quartering your oarthocks, so that you can paddle to the cone, turn and come back to the store, left and right. Easy as that, whispered Hazel. When first going in a straight line did not look as easy as Grumstick made it sound. When Wisp paddled on the left, Hazel paddled 3 times on the right. When Wisp paddled 3 times on the left, Hazel paddled 6 times on the right. We're going in circles, said Hazel, around and around and around. In a circle? Why do you think that is, Whips? Why do you think we're going in circles? Do you know where we're going in circles? A circle is not straight line. Width is not. I know, that's a circle. Is, cried Whips. You have to stop rowing so much each time. Paddle scratched her ankle, antlers, and thumped her foot. Huh? Who knew? Grumsick scribbled on his clipboard some more. Norm and Oliver, now it's your turn. Oliver turned to the side and gave Norm a thump. Norm gave Oliver a thump up in return. Oliver dipped his paddle in the water and pushed with 2 hands and all of his might. Norm dipped his paddle into the water and pushed with 1 hand and just a little bit of his might. The canoe veered off to one side. Switch sides, said Norm, trying to get them back on track. But Oliver didn't hear him. His life vest covered most of his head. Crispy fries? How should I know that? They're serving for lunch. Norm, right now we need to figure out how to paddle and get his over with before the lake monster shows up. No sooner had Oliver said, Lake monster, that Norm saw something in the water. Oliver, look, Norm said. He pointed his oar out towards the middle of the lake. Oliver also stopped paddling. Is that the monster of Shadow Lake? Norm finished. A single eye on top of a long, thin stalk had slowly risen above the surface of the water, and it was looking right at them. Meanwhile, I spy with my little eye the Bigfoot, said Barry. Snoop. Barry pressed his eye against the periscope of his one-person sunburn. Once you are back out here in the middle of the lake tomorrow, I'll just moto under your canoe, reach up with my sermon missile claw, and swoop you up in a net. He lowered the periscope and dissembled deeper. A genius plan, Scoop, he said to himself. A most genius plan indeed. That night, Norm and Oliver told Whips and Hazel all about what they had seen. And then Norm said, It's one big eye poked out of the water. Turned and looked right at us. As soon as we saw it dip back below the water, said Oliver. What are we going to do, said Whips. Well, tell someone, said Hazel. That's what we'll do. We'll tell Zena and Grumstick. We'll tell the other campers and the army and the Navy and Hazel, said Norm. Yes, deep breathe, deep breathe. Got it, she said. When the camp bowl halted 3 times, it was time for light hour out. But none of them could fall asleep, not when they knew that tomorrow they would have to face the monster of Shadow Lake. Okay, camper, said Grumsick. Today's the day. Norm tried to keep his eyes open. Oliver snored while standing up. Hazel could hardly hold her antlers up, and with bloodshot eyes were hiding behind his mop of blue hair. None of them had slept a wink. Grumsick barely his wits to wake them all up. I don't know what's got into you for, but if you think you can pass this canoe test in your sleep, you have another thing coming. Now put on your vest. Norma, Liver, Hazel, and Whis huddled for their rest, while Grumsick nodded and grumbled and scribbled things on his clipboard. Norm wondered if Grumsick was playing tic-tac-toe. Norm wondered if Grumsick was playing tic-tac-toe against himself. In order to pass your canoe skill test, you will have to paddle out Mystery Island in the middle of the lake and collect a flag to rescue Xena. So why is Xena in the land? Wait, said Norm. Our cousin is out on an island in the middle of the lake? Yes, said Grumsick. She has strided there, but she had s'mores, and you'll have s'mores too when you rescue her. Hello, Xena called, waving from the tiny island in the middle of the lake. Can someone please get me off this island? As you can see, said Grumsick, she needs your help. Or at least 6 for making s'more. Can't make s'more without a good s'more stick. Oliver raised his hand. But, Mr. Grumsick, there's a s'more, said Grumsick. In the lake, said Norm. We saw s'more, Grumsick said. Wisp said. But s'mores, Hazel thumped her feet. Wait, I know this one, said Norm. S'mores, said Grumsick, scribbling an X on his clipboard. Ha, I won. Okay, glad we had that talk. Now let's get paddling. Meanwhile, a long periscope poked above the surface of water. It's sailing towards Mystery Island. It swift back to Snore, and then ever so slow it dipped back below the surface of the water. Patents, Barbie, he said. A trap soaring in half. Is a trap gone to waste? Barbie Snoop knew that it was only a matter of time. He was going to get what he wanted. Barbie Snoop always got what he wanted, and that he more anything was a Bigfoot, but not just any Bigfoot. He wanted his Bigfoot. He wanted Norm. To be continued in part 3. Will Barbie Snoop get his Bigfoot? Find out in the final part of Creature Campers, The Secret of Shadow Lake.